Welcome everyone to Buddha Center. It's so nice to see all of you. I feel so fortunate to be able today to once again discuss Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, a text that encompasses all of the stages of the path that spiritual practitioners need to go through in order to be free from the lower realms initially, and then at the medium level, be free from cyclic existence altogether and achieve an abiding nirvana. And at the greatest level, at the final level, the level we will all achieve, all vehicles kind of trickle into one vehicle, in terms of the things that the Buddha taught, and they all end us up at one place, this, river we jump in that eventually has some twists and turns, and maybe some of us go down, different twists and turns. But the Buddha, everything that the Buddha taught was to allow us, no matter where we are as a spiritual practitioner and jump in the river, end up at Buddhahood at the other side of the practice. So we're fortunate that today we are learning about a teaching given by Lama Tsongkhapa that he's commenting on great works, the root text being a teacher's lamp for the path to enlightenment, and as an umbrella, the Maitreya Zabhisama Alamkara. We're looking at this incredible text, which shows us kind of each stage along that pathway, along that, the river we were talking about that, kind of leads to a specific ocean. Each one of those stages of the path are all found in here. And some of us may have floated further down and, may be ready for because we've realized, some of the stages of the smaller scope. This text can then appeal to someone who then needs to realize the stages of the medium scope, because we know that these stages, these kind of capacities, all must be realized for every individual if he or she wants to become a Buddha. So we have the teachings, again, that show us how to be free from the lower realms, the teachings that show us how to become free from samsara altogether, and those teachings that show us not only how to become free from samsara altogether, but to become complete Buddhas, where we not only have freedom from suffering, but we have perfect wisdom, love, and compassion, perfect skillful means, and power, and become the most reliable guides in the universe, because we've gotten rid of even the kind of stains and the subtle self-cherishing attitude that those just in an abiding nirvana haven't gotten rid of. We're free from the two extremes of abiding in samsara and free from the extreme of abiding in just peace for oneself alone in kind of a selfish way, in a, the kind of individualized liberation way where one only is worried about oneself. So we see that the Buddhas, and we will all become a Buddha, are free from those extremes of nirvana because of getting free from the extreme of samsara because of having gotten rid of the afflictive obstructions, and free from the extreme of peace because of the bodhisattva path. They don't abide in that nirvana. They spontaneously help all sentient beings because the obstructions to omniscience have been removed. And when those are removed, even though the coarse self-cherishing attitude is removed for one who's in an abiding nirvana in the Hinayana vehicle, the subtle self-cherishing attitude isn't removed. So they abide in that nirvana. They stay there in their own peace. But the bodhisattva path removes that subtle self-cherishing attitude that makes that practitioner of the lesser vehicle just stay there in their own peace, and makes it so he or she must spontaneously work for the needs of all sentient beings, because the pathway which allows all of us to achieve not only our needs, but all sentient beings' needs, requires us to learn how to have love and compassion for all sentient beings. And we make a vow along that path to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And the sake means that we bring all sentient beings to a state of Buddhahood as well. Because all sentient beings crave happiness, crave freedom from suffering, and the best forms of those two things put together are the ones that the Buddha experiences day and night and will always experience forever. So this is the kind of teaching we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about a very authentic teaching passed down from a very pure lineage, from Buddha Shakyamuni, through the Nalanda Pandits, through the Tibetan scholars, through Lama Tsongkhapa and Kirtub Je, etc., and eventually down to our teachers that we have experience with now and have experienced, such as Khyentse Geshe Wandak, and who unfortunately passed, but is still with us and so present with the teachings that he gave. When I just think of the teachings that he gave, it's just as if he's fresh, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the Praise of Dependent Origination. It's just as fresh as a moon, just cool and fresh. When I think of the teachings and I think of this incredible being, it becomes fresh in my mind. And we're so fortunate to have had, these teachings from this unbroken lineage. And and when we say unbroken, it means that the teachings haven't been distorted. They haven't been changed. Someone hasn't come in and said, oh, let me add this in because it's not enough in terms of what the initial principal point that's being made is. Ornaments are put on the initial principal point so you can understand the initial principal point, but there are no additions to the initial principal point. And that's what we find in the lineage that we have. And I find to be so fortunate in my life because I've seen that these teachings actually work. And at a small level, little bit by little bit, I can see the maturation of my own mind. And I can see it becoming less and less childish, although I'm very, very childish still. I can see that it becomes less and less childish because of the influence of these teachings. So experience has, validated the words. And that's what we have to all do, is have our experience validate the words. And it becomes our knowledge. It becomes our discovery. And I encourage all of you to take these words and try to figure out how you would apply them in your daily life. So now I'm setting the premise of what we're teaching today. So now from my side as a teacher, I will, as I've been doing, the beginning of the teachings, recite a verse from the Prayer of Noble Conduct, the King of Aspirations prayers, the Sanche Moulin, where I make an aspiration to be able to teach in the language of all beings in the universe. And this language, I'm imagining they can understand exactly what I'm saying, and anything that needs to be clarified in their minds in relation to the teachings for beings of three capacities is clarified. So the object of observation of this meditation, this aspiration, this contrived thing that I'm doing, is all sentient beings, any beings who have any afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience. So we imagine that I bring all hell, hungry ghosts, animal, humans, demigods, and gods here. And I imagine that they can hear me in their individual languages. I know that I've brought them here when I'm thinking like this for a good reason, the best reason, the only thing that will free them from afflictive obstructions and obstructions to omniscience. So I know that the material that I'm presenting is worthy of calling all beings in the universe to hear. And if they don't understand me, they won't come. So I have to imagine that I'm doing so in all of their own individual languages. So this is what I'm from my side doing when I recite this prayer. And from your side as a student, imagine that you're leading all sentient beings here. You're grabbing them by the hands and calling them from their various realms, the hell, 8 hot hells, 8 cold hells, and the surrounding hells, and the hungry ghosts, and the animals. And we've seen so many animals in the ocean, animals in the ground, animals in the sky, animals living on the ground. We can think of so many different kinds of animals. Imagine we're leading them all here, and they're going to be able to understand this Dharma in their own individual language. They're going to be able to understand how to get free from the lower realms of his cyclic existence by getting rid of non-virtue. So we imagine that we're bringing all of those beings here, and we imagine we're bringing all the humans, demigods, and gods here in the best way we can imagine, imagining real beings first, Imagine we're leading all of them here. We no longer have the silly labels of, oh, this person I would help more than this person, and this person I don't like at all. This is a friend, this is a stranger, this is an enemy. We see from our meditations that we do, which have brought us to this place, that all sentient beings have had these relationships with us since beginningless time, where they've taken care of us when we're most vulnerable. So we imagine that we're leading them all here because we have some conviction that we've made in our practice through practicing the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, that we've decided to take it upon ourselves, the task of repaying the kindness that they've shown us, repaying the kindness that they've shown us when they've taken care of us when we were so vulnerable. And every single sentient being in the universe is taking care of us when we're so vulnerable. So if we make this kind of pact that we're going to repay the kindness they've shown us, and we have this kind of extraordinary attitude that takes place in relation to this pact that we make, that we are going to bring all sentient beings, somehow repay sentient beings kindness. When we think of what sentient beings want, we think sentient beings want to be free from suffering. We think that sentient beings want the most happiness possible. And when we start to have conviction that we're going to lead beings to that state and say, I will be the one responsible for doing this, we recognize that we can't just, first of all, make sentient beings turn into a state where there's freedom from suffering and happiness. That's not possible. It's just not possible, even for the Buddha. And we realize that we don't even really know what the needs are of all sentient beings, other than the general aspect of everyone needing to practice the 3 principal paths and needing to practice the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. We know this generally. So we don't really know exactly what they need, and it's only the Buddha only the Buddha that knows exactly what they need. And the Buddha has taught these stages of the path, so we can be confident that these stages of the path are what sentient beings need. But in order for us to be able to actually do what we're thinking about doing right now, and that is connect with every sentient being in their own individual languages, with their own individual needs being fulfilled in terms of teaching them whatever it is they need to hear to understand more of the truth of suchness, we must become Buddhas. We recognize that we have to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And this kind of idea that we have and this recognition that we have comes from our analysis, comes from our reflection on the points that we've learned. And when we look at the 7-point cause and effect and equalizing and exchanging self with others, we come to these conclusions that the way that we can achieve our freedom from suffering and our bliss is by relying upon the bodhisattva path. And we know that the bodhisattvas become more and more able to connect with sentient beings, to teach them the truth of suchness. And the way that those bodhisattvas became able to do any of the work they do in the first place was by maturing their minds in the way that we're maturing our minds and creating conditions the way that they're creating conditions in their minds to be able to do the work that will be necessary to become a Buddha and do the work that all sentient beings really need done. And that work will be spontaneously done in a kind of catered way to an individual's needs once we're Buddhas. So we imagine that we're bringing all sentient beings here because we're trying to connect with these emotions in our mind, these affective minds that then just spontaneously want to work for others. And we're also knowing that we're bringing them here to a place where there isn't any other information than this that sentient beings really need to know. All of the other worldly information that we would bring people over to hear about, have people come over for the game, bring people over to see the show, let's all get together and go to the concert. All of these things that we do where we invite people generally are for gossip. When we look at the definition of gossip. But here today, we're engaging in meaningful talk that has meaning. What does that mean that it has meaning? It means that it will lead to the complete removal, the permanent removal of suffering and the permanent removal of unheightened states of happiness forever. So we always invite people over to have a good time. But now we're really inviting all sentient beings to have the real good time. So we're so apt to have people over for dinner, to chat, talk about the news, talk about politics, because we think that this is somehow a good time. But all we're doing is inviting beings to come with us to somehow indulge in the suffering of change, to somehow indulge in more causes for samsara, somehow indulge in things that will distract us from real meaning, what really means something. And today we're talking about real meaning because we're talking about the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity, the teachings shared in common with beings of medium capacity, and the teachings for beings of great capacity. And these teachings will lead every being in the universe eventually to the state of Buddhahood. So with this kind of intention, imagine that all sentient beings are here. So sit with this for a moment, where you think about the reasoning behind bringing all sentient beings here. You think about that all beings will be the object from which I work in terms of my investment in my path to Buddhahood. So I will need to be able to have all sentient beings in my life. And the more and more I can connect with them, the closer and closer I can get to this beautiful mind of bodhicitta. This beautiful mind of bodhicitta that wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings day and night. This mind that came about from our own renunciation, recognizing the drawbacks of cyclic existence. Recognizing that we are empty of inherent existence. All sentient beings are empty of inherent existence. Bodhicitta is empty of inherent existence. The Buddhahood we seek is empty of inherent existence. With the recognition of the emptiness of the action, agent, and object, and the recognition that we must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, we start to do the things that will make that happen every moment of our life. And right now, we invite all sentient beings to be our guest. Laike dan le dan jinge rubun da dan mi ge nan dan rewa gon ji dan ji zamba dan je ge du da ji ju den du. In the language of the gods, nagas and yakshas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni appears in the space in front of you, about an arm length away, eye height, thumb size. Just imagine Buddha Shakyamuni, beautiful, radiant, three-dimensional, actual live Buddha Shakyamuni, but static, not moving. About the thumb size, just imagine Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you. Focusing only on Buddha Shakyamuni. Now we're going to also, while our mental consciousness is invoking this image in the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni, we're going to have our mind focus on breathing in, breathing out, and the counting of the breath. So we imagine now Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation, about an arm length away, the size of the thumb, eye height, beautiful, the normal way we would visualize Buddha Shakyamuni. We're telling our minds what to do. Our minds normally aren't told what to do, so our mind's not real good at listening. So these exercises help us to train our minds and show our minds that, hey, we're in charge. We're the ones who are going to kind of lead here. We don't need to just be kind of chaotically strewn around. We want to be the leader here. So now we're telling our minds that we're only going to focus on breathing in and out and counting in Buddha Shakyamuni in the front generation. And if any errors occur, what's an error? Well, we've told our minds what to do. And if our minds aren't doing exactly what we've told it to do, there's an error. So we've said focus on these 4 things: breathing in, breathing out, counting, Buddha Shakyamuni, 4. And so what could happen? What would be an error that would be deviating from what I told my mind to do? And according to the great masters, there's kind of 2 sides of the coin of error. One side is a scattering, an excitement, a busyness of mind, chatter, conceptuality. This is one bank of problems in a general aspect. And then general errors. And then on the other side of this coin, other kinds of problems you can have are things that are called lethargy, laxity, dullness, sleepiness, sinking, darkness, objects not clear. So you may not be going blah, 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 but the object might not be clear because you're actually getting a little bit too comfortable and you're not allowing the clarity of the object to be there, and your meditation starts to turn into almost hypnosis, and it starts to turn into something where it isn't clear. And this is actually the hardest thing once you get to the higher stages of the things that lead to shamatha, to notice. And then there's a subtle, kind of excitement of mind, a subtle scattering of mind that takes place as well. We can always kind of notice when there's kind of discursive thought going on and it isn't breathing in and out and counting in Buddha Shakyamuni. That's really easy to kind of find out. But what about a trickle that's underneath the ice of mass conceptuality? Is there kind of a trickle of or even a trickle of just noise? Am I listening to a noise that isn't breathing in and out, counting in Buddha Shakyamuni? Is there a trickle there? So when we look at this scattering, it isn't just someone is screaming in your head. This excitement can happen at a gross and subtle level. This kind of scattering we're talking about. We'll get into the technical details of this. I'm just speaking in plain language with some kind of technical words involved. This kind of scattering can take place subtly that may not be as easy to notice. And as you get quieter and quieter in the mind, you may notice it and say, wait, I thought I was working on dullness, but I haven't even really gotten to dullness because there's this hum that I thought was just lethargy or laxity. There's something in there that's almost like new age music playing in the background of my calmness. That is also an obstacle. So these 2 things are, you're getting, the object isn't real bright, or the object is shaky because your mind's all over the place. So you need the object that you're, have as your observation brilliant and bright and also stable and just steady right there. So the errors are those things that we just talked about that can occur in your mind at gross and subtle levels. Gross laxity, obviously you're just about to sleep and it's dark, but a subtle laxity has kind of a element where it feels very blissful, even though there's a subtle error going on. And many meditators stay in that subtle error because of the kind of blissful feeling of mind and body that occurs. And you see even some of Buddha's teachers who hadn't transcended korwa, samsara, got stuck, and you can get stuck in states of laxity and dullness, or stuck in attachment to shamatha. And this is where Buddha's teachers were at. They weren't stuck. They were stuck in states of shamatha, stuck in states of calm abiding. But even before you get to that place where you could get stuck there because of the mental and physical pliancy and that kind of occurs from it, this attachment that can occur to your meditation, you can get stuck before you even get shamatha in a dullness that feels really blissful too. So these are details we'll go over on Thursday nights a little bit more. And I don't mean to confuse things at all. But yes, you can get stuck, addicted to your meditation once you get shamatha, if you aren't adding in special insight, and you can get stuck in an error before you even get to shamatha, because being addicted to a blissful state that's kind of going on that you're mistaking. So these are errors that can occur. And you have a spy in your mind we talk about called introspection. I don't mean to keep going over this, but this is meditation. This is how we will become enlightened. Those who, don't have this busy mind dwell in the fangs, it says, of the afflictions, according to Shantideva. So we have to get this calm mind. We have to figure out exactly what this calm mind is. So this spy of introspection is checking to see if any of these things are happening. Now, how are you really going to know? Sure, I give you some general principles, but if you don't know the precise things that the masters say go on in relation to excitement and lethargy or laxity, if you don't know the precise things, your spy won't know what to catch. So sure, your spy could catch you about to go to sleep, and your spy could catch you with your mind like really busy. But if your spy in your mind isn't trained by the wisdom arisen from learning, then your spy doesn't know what the heck it's doing. So we can use these concepts, and it sounds great, like, oh, we've got to get rid of this. I got a spy in my mind. Okay, mindfulness is holding the focal object of breathing in and out, counting in Buddha Shakyamuni. And this spy is checking to see if there's a problem. Very, very, very gross. When Jeff gives the talk, when I give this talk about how to calm the mind down and fix on an object, it's very, very gross. We have to go deeper in to know what introspection's trying to catch, and what the object is supposed to be doing, and what's a good object, what's a bad object, and this mind that's setting on the object calmly, inwardly, and abiding there. What is an error to it calmly abiding there? And it's got gross and subtle errors, and these gross and subtle errors have to be identified in your studies in order for introspection to have any idea that they've occurred. So we have to have the wisdom arisen from hearing. We have to have this. One part of the things, the faults, are forgetting the instruction. One of the faults of shamatha, forgetting the instruction. We have to understand, forgetting the, what we're supposed to be doing. We have to have this instruction to forget first, to have that fault happen. So the spy in the mind has got to be a learned one. So, we make these characters up, like the spy in the mind. It's just our mind, right? But we make these characters up to understand. So if you were going to hire a spy, you'd really want a smart spy to spy on whatever you wanted them to spy on. You wouldn't just hire someone who didn't really know what they were looking. You wouldn't just say, hey, I need you to go spy on so-and-so. They'd say, well, what are you looking for? What do you want to know about them? Like, is there certain things I'm supposed to spy on? I mean, or you just want a general idea that they, their lights go on in the morning, then they seem to drive away, and then they come back from work. Is this the information that you were looking for? No, you would hire the spy and you would say, okay, I'm looking for this. I need that. I need to know if this has happened, if that has happened. That's what the spy is really, really doing, a spy in conventional terms. So you need an educated spy to watch, to see, hey, is my mind doing what it's told? Because your mind is tricky. Your mind's been tricking you forever. And you've never really figured out how to control it. So we have to become educated on what we're looking for, and what the problems are, and what the antidotes are, and how we start, and what the conditions that are going to be necessary for this to even work are going to need to be. So I just want to encourage all of you, when you do meditation, study the stages of shamatha, study the faults, etc., the whole presentation of it, because you're going to need it, because you'll get lost in your meditation if you don't. I remember when I first started with Buddhism, I learned some kind of breathing meditations, and I saw the kind of like almost like a drug high. Yeah, like that would occur. And luckily, by the time I got to these kinds of meditations that I was playing with, I had instruction that kind of was saying that, watch out, this can occur. But I had firsthand experience with some of the things that can happen and be distracting, with breathing meditation, because you start, endorphins happen, dopamines are released, and things can occur that can trick you, that are, similar to a runner's high, that can be created when you're doing meditation, and can be a distraction. So we have to be very educated on whether or not we just went for a run, or we're training our mind and we have a feeling. I'm not discounting training in general. That's all training. But whether or not we're training our mind in the way that it's going to do what we really need it to do at the end of the day. And we can't have it stuck. It needs to be able to be ready and waiting for your special insight to get so good and so calm right next to it, for your special insight to ignite a pliancy that then that unites your calm abiding with your wisdom. Your wisdom gets so calm and so bright that it actually makes the calm abiding, when it unites with it, more brilliant. So we're saying it's got to be brilliant and it's got to be calm. And somehow that supercharged wisdom, when you put it with the calm, brilliant, it becomes like brilliant. I don't know about it. I've just read about it. But it's pretty cool when you read about how, you read about how you get your mind calm and it's like bright as can be. And then you add this wisdom to it and it's like brilliant and calm. It's as calm like a rock, just stable, but just as illuminated as it could possibly be, and illuminated with this non-affirming negative that we have to learn about. The absence of inherent existence of reality, of all phenomena, the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. This illuminates your mind when coupled with this calm mind. So that was just a little bit of a discussion about this. So let's just try for a moment or two to kind of play with these concepts, breathing in and out, counting, and then imagining the front generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. So we'll do this just for a moment. If not for just, okay, what am I trying to say? One really good reason to do this is Buddha said that we can calm our conceptuality down by counting the breath. So if it doesn't do anything but that, it calms us down and gets us to a place from which we can really listen to the teaching well, without any of the problems of the 3 pots that we all know about. So let's do a little bit of this meditation in the 7-point Vairocana posture. This is the posture that we've adopted many, many times in the past. So imagine that you get into this 7-point Vairocana posture that's been passed down from these incredible masters. And we'll do the focal object breathing in and out and counting in Buddha Shakyamuni. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni starts to move around and looks into your eyes with such love and compassion and such joy that we're here today studying exactly what he came to the world to show us how to do 2,600 years ago. He came here to show everyone how to achieve the state that he had achieved by discovering the solution to all of our problems. Buddha came to this world to show us how to get rid of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. And here we are today, learning exactly how to do it. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is so overjoyed. And now from this joy that you see Buddha Shakyamuni experiencing, there's a bliss that starts to almost cause an eruption, causes Buddha Shakyamuni to shake and glow and radiate even more. And suddenly the entire merit field begins to fill in the space in front of you, imagining all the holy enlightened beings, imagining His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Khenso Geshe Wandak, imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo and Demalocha Rinpoche and Khenso Lobsang Gyatso, imagining Geshe Doje Damdu, Umzola Geshe Aga, Geshe Malatenzin Ladrinla, Jeffrey Hopkins, Chado Rinpoche, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, Ani Tupten Chodron, any being that you consider a holy enlightened being. We're so fortunate to be influenced by these beings who've come to this world and shed so much light on the Dharma for all of us. We'd be so lost without beings like this. We're so fortunate to be connected to them. Imagine all the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Basu Bandhu and Dignaga and Dharmakirti and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Shakyaprabha and Gunaprabha and Lama Salimpa, imagining Lord Atisha and imagining the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Aryadeva and Chandrakirti and Shantideva and Baba Vega and Chandrashita, Kamalashila, all these holy beings, again imagining Lama Salimpa and Atisha. We're so fortunate to be connected to them. We're looking at the stage of the path to enlightenment by Lama Tsongkhapa that contains all of these incredible lineages, all trickled down into this incredible ocean called the Lam Rim. We're so fortunate that Lord Atisha came to this world to combine these lineages, to show us how these lineages produce stages of paths. Imagine beings of the lineage of blessings passed down from Vajradhara and Saraha and Matripa and Talopa and Naropa and Lusawa Marpa and Milarepa, and imagining Gampopa. Imagining Lord Atisha is right there in the space in front of you, who wrote The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, all those incredible works. Oh, we're so fortunate. Lord Atisha passing down the Lamrim lineage to Dron Tompa, imagining the three old Kadampa lineages, imagining the holy beings of the Nyingma, such as Padmasambhava, Sakya, Satyakunga Nimpo, Sakya Pandita, imagining the Kaju, the holy beings of Kaju, Karmapas and so forth, the Galupa beings, imagining Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtub Jain, Joseph Jain, Penchen Sanandrapa, and Basuchuji Jitsen, Jayan Sheba, and Purvajog, and Jitsumpa, imagining the seventh Dalai Lama, Gonchu Jimmy Wombo, Janja Rupi Dorje, all these holy beings. We've heard their teachings. We're connected to these beings. They've put ornament all over the Nalanda scholars' teachings. They put ornaments all over the Buddha's teachings. We're so fortunate to be connected to these beings, imagining the beings of the highest Yoga Tantra, Performance Tantra, Action Tantra, all the 35 Buddhas, and imagining all the protector deities here in the space in front of us. We're here to become Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We need to keep reinforcing this within our mind. We're here. It'll help us concentrate. It'll help us focus on this teaching. If our motivation is we must learn this because we must become a Buddha, it will allow our mindfulness to sit on this teaching much, much better. We won't have the faults of the three pots. We think, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings? I'm connected to the spiritual family, all of these beings in the merit field in front of me that only wish for me to have one thing, and that's freedom from suffering and complete bliss. We're so fortunate. We're here to become Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. The merit field comes here to teach us how to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We've arranged all sentient beings here so that they can too share this gift that we've been given, which is the key to success, real success. Success being what? Freedom from suffering and complete bliss. We're sharing this with all sentient beings. Normally in our lives, we're such misers. We don't want to share, but we're learning to share the greatest gift we've ever been given with all sentient beings. Or just for a moment, sit imagining that all sentient beings are here. All the enlightened beings are in the space in front of you. You're here to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. You have all the causes and conditions necessary to do so. You know how to create the mental basis for bodhicitta, because we're so fortunate to have studied Panchen Sonandrapa's general meaning of perfection. Recognizing that the merit field is empty of inherent existence. It's merely labeled by a thought and dependence upon a collection. All sentient beings that we've brought here, we're sentient beings, are empty of inherent existence. Jeff is merely a label designated by thought and dependence upon a collection of aggregates, 5 aggregates. Jeff is empty of inherent existence. The teaching is empty of inherent existence. Sit in this idea, how we can have this all work while it's empty of inherent existence. Understanding that empty of inherent existence doesn't mean non-existence. It means that inherent existence doesn't exist. And with this in mind, we'll all recite the Heart Sutra together. The Heart Sutra's subject matter is the ultimate truth, so it has so much power when we recite this. But just reciting it is good, and there's an immense amount of power in these words because the words are the ultimate truth. But knowing what it means and reflecting on the meaning of it while you're hearing these non-affirming negatives being spit at you by Buddha's blessings is what really makes the difference between a cognitive evolution and not having one. It takes so long for us to just rely upon meeting with things and imprints. And what happens when we rely upon that? Eventually, we meet with causes and conditions to be able to understand the meaning and analyze the meaning. Let's not wait. Come to know the meaning of the Heart Sutra today, the explicit meaning. All phenomena lack inherent existence. All phenomena are not truly established. All phenomena do not exist right in the object, right in themselves, intrinsically. There's no phenomena you will find from your mind to the Buddha's mind that has inherent existence. And this is the special feature of our mind, that it's empty of inherent existence, and the stains in our mind are adventitious. They're added there. They are not something that is the nature of our mind. And that's how the Buddha became a Buddha, was by removing the things that we currently have that can be removed. And they can be removed because our mind isn't stuck in one place, because it just dependently originates. And dependent origination shows that things are empty of inherent existence. And if they're empty of inherent existence, then they aren't stuck. Our mind dependently originates into what it dependently originates into. And if we make it dependently originate into an omniscient mind, then that's what it will dependently originate into. It's not stuck. It doesn't have inherent existence. It isn't inherently defiled. The defilements are empty of inherent existence. The mind is empty of inherent existence. The defilements could be empty of inherent existence, but if they were the nature of the mind, we'd be stuck. But the nature of the mind is the nature of clear light and unsullied. So we're not stuck. Very interesting. Anything can't become anything. But something that can become something can become it. So fortunate that we have the something that can become something. We have this mental consciousness that can become perfect. It couldn't become perfect if it was in the nature of being stained. But it's not in the nature of being stained. The stains are adventitious. So the Heart Sutra is showing us how to start to understand what it is that keeps our mind stained, what it is that keeps the afflictive obstructions in our mind. At the root, what are afflictive obstructions? They are the self-grasping ignorance. If we don't have self-grasping ignorance, we don't have afflictive obstructions. If we get rid of this ignorance that grasps at the self as being inherently existent, we don't have afflictive obstructions. They're removed. So it's this wisdom that's the pure antidote. And it's the wisdom that's coupled with bodhicitta that's the pure antidote to our lack of, like, the cap a Hinayana Arhat would have on happiness. That cap gets lifted if we can combine this wisdom that gets us out of samsara with this bodhicitta that wants to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, so that all sentient beings can experience Buddhahood also. All sentient beings can have bliss like we want. And we come to this conclusion through lots of analysis. And then we see with introspection whether or not our mind is holding on to what we've analyzed and concluded or not, and whether our mind is behaving in a way that tallies with these conclusions. So important to know this. Explicitly, the Heart Sutra talking about the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. This non-affirming negative, this not, there is no inherent existence, full stop. Not a little, not kind of, not, oh, but there is this other thing. Just saying in relation to inherent existence, it's non-existent, but exists subjectively, conventionally, through mere imputation, mere thought designation, and dependence upon a collection of parts, a basis of designation. My thought names it that, and then this name in my mind makes it exist as this or that. It's a phenomena, so it can be named as this or that. But the name itself isn't the true thing. Okay, so the Heart Sutra. So, and then it implicitly, the Heart Sutra talks about the 5 paths, the 5 Mahayana paths: the path of accumulation, path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning. I just screen shared, by the way. I heard you before, but then I forgot, and then I remembered. So I encourage you to really study. His Holiness has a great commentary, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, on the Heart Sutra. There's a lot of great texts out there on YouTube. Geshe Dorje Damdu, I'm sure, has a commentary on the Heart Sutra. And Khenser Geshe Wandak, I don't know if his commentary on the Heart Sutra is findable on the internet, but we're going to work on that. We have at least the audio recording of it for sure. And it's beautiful, using Jayang Gapi Lodru's commentary. Jayang Gapi Lodru was the first textbook writer for Drepung Losel Ling. And then Panchen Sonandrapa kind of took over. But the first textbook writer for Losel Ling was Jayang Gapi Lodru. And then Panchen Sonandrapa's works became more vast and clear. And so Losel Ling adopted this textbook writer. But the first one was Jayang Gapi Lodru. And Rinpoche, when he came to the United States, started getting requests to teach the Heart Sutra. And he thought to himself, okay, I studied Prajnaparamita for 7 years and debated it. Now I've taught it for 17 years. And you're asking me now to teach the Heart Sutra over a 2-day period of time, And Rinpoche was, trying to figure out how, he didn't have experience giving like teachings in the West in a condensed way. we knew Rinpoche. He taught the Lam Rim Chemo for 10 years. That was Rinpoche's style. Like, don't be satisfied with a partial instruction. So he had to kind of, this is him telling me this story. I don't know. This is him telling me this story. I don't know if this is public knowledge, but so he said, well, how can I do this? And he found this commentary by Jayang Gapi Lodru. And it was so concise and so compact. And it just showed where the breakpoints in the Heart Sutra are for each of the 5 paths. And then, the Madhyamaka Prasangika view is the Madhyamaka Prasangika view. So Rinpoche used this beautiful text. And this beautiful text not only elucidates the Heart Sutra, but it negates so many things that had, by the time Jayang Gapi Lodru wrote it, kind of had arisen in Tibet. Ideas about the Heart Sutra is really a secret, teaching where you need an initiation in order to practice it. And then you recite this mantra and the deity. And so in this text, it goes over how there are sutra mantras and many, many sutra mantras. And this is a sutra mantra that is merely a text that is a condensing for a sharp bodhisattva of the meaning of all of the paths to Buddhahood and the nature of reality. It's just condensed. The entire meaning of the Heart Sutra is condensed into this mantra. So, we say a name mantra of a deity is the name mantra is the condensing of the deity into a mantra. Well, and that's Tantra though. Here in Sutra, we're condensing the meaning of this for a sharp bodhisattva into just a mantra. You'll even see the essence of dependent origination mantra. Oh, hey Dharma, hey tu pravava, etc. You'll see that in this mantra, we have that this very, very short statement that contains all of the Four Noble Truths and their meaning, and it contains the meaning, the Four Seals, and so forth. So we find this Sanskrit mantra that's recited that's similar to this in that it contains the whole meaning within it. It contains it all in just a few syllables. And we see that these syllables contain the pathways that a bodhisattva goes through in terms of realizing emptiness. So this is really what this is. This is the pathways that a bodhisattva goes through realizing emptiness. Because he or she first realizes bodhicitta and has obviously an understanding to a degree of emptiness and a calm mind, and then uses those two things, this understanding of emptiness and calm mind, to get a union of calm abiding and special insight to kind of inferentially understand emptiness. And then this bodhisattva eventually breaks through the conceptuality, breaks through this kind of dualistic appearance, this conceptuality, to have a direct perception of emptiness as a bodhisattva. So they have bodhicitta, they're, took engaged bodhisattva vows, the path of accumulation at the medium level usually. So the rest of the thing is about accumulating merit and seeing emptiness in a more and more kind of subtle way to get rid of subtler and subtler things. So first the bodhisattva infers emptiness if they haven't seen emptiness. There's a track where they may have been a honest and we're in nirvana, and then they'd seen emptiness clearly, and then they go to the bodhisattva track. But I'm just talking, the everyday bodhisattva guy and gal, going through the pathway is inferring emptiness and then directly experiencing emptiness and directly experiencing it more and more and more, and becoming better and better and better through accumulation of virtue and purer activities at helping more and more sentient beings. So this maturation is their understanding the nature of reality more and more and more, and their collection of merit is allowing them to be of more and more service because their skill sets becoming higher and higher and higher. And we look at the three moralities: morality of abstaining from non-virtue, morality of collecting virtue, and then the morality of working for sentient beings. So it's really, really neat when you see that this evolution is taking place for the Bodhisattva related to emptiness the whole time. So the Heart Sutra, the essence of it is emptiness, but the evolution is the Bodhisattva, getting closer and closer to perfect knowledge, closer and closer to perfect knowledge. And the only way to have perfect knowledge is if you're on the Bodhisattva track, because there's something about self-centeredness that takes place on the lesser vehicle track when you just want to become a nirvana for yourself. There's something about that kind of like subtle self-cherishing that's left over that can't be gotten rid of unless you have this bodhicitta that's coupling with the wisdom. So there's a subtle knowing even that this lesser vehicle arhat doesn't possess because of a subtle selfishness that's still there, that's impeding all knowing. So the wisdom has to combine somehow with this other cherishing kind of attitude that the bodhisattva has in order to work on, because there's still, imagine if you have a little selfishness, there's still a little self, right? That's kind of a coarse way to put it, but right, there's still a little of that. And how could you know everything? There was still a little of that, the residue of that. It's the best way to say it, the residue of that. Man, I cherish myself more than anyone in the universe. But now you're in a nirvana, in a lesser vehicle. You have this residue of it still. Now you're just oblivious to everybody's needs. That's the residue. This oblivion to everybody else's needs, you're not just discarding their needs actively anymore. I'm more important than you. You're just oblivious. You're just there in peace. That oblivion is a form of selfishness at a subtle level. And without removing that, you still aren't the wisest one. So this Teata Om Gate, path of accumulation, you get bodhicitta, just the normal Gate, path of preparation. You have a union of calm abiding and special insight that has its object of observation, emptiness. Then Paragate, so that's the second gate, preparation. Paragate, path of seeing, you remove all conceptuality and you have a direct yogic perception of emptiness. Just like you can see this cup in front of you, your mind will have a yogic realization of emptiness directly without having to think about something, without being like it's empty because of dependent origination. It'll just be empty. And your mind will directly perceive it in an uninterrupted way and then be released from it. And you will never, ever believe things to be true again, according to scripture, not according to what I've experienced. So the bodhisattva, you'll still, things will appear inherently existent, but this being will then know better from then on, and eventually will no longer see them even to appear as inherently existent. And that's what happens to the Buddha. The Buddha, when walking around and not directly perceiving emptiness, can see that things are not inherently existent by appearance. Whereas even a bodhisattva on the 10th ground, when they're not directly experiencing emptiness, sees the appearance of inherent existence, but doesn't believe it. So anyway, just wanted to share some details with you. Why not, right? What else do we have to do? Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. And the reason I said, what else do we have to do? Leave the Heart Sutra on. The reason I said, what else do we have to do is what Shanti Deva said. If seeing emptiness directly is the only way to freedom, what else do we have to do? The Bodhisattva gets that. What else do I have to do? I have to accumulate merit. I have to do all of these things, but that wisdom is the only liberating path. And it says it right in Dharmakirti's Pramanavartikarika in the 2nd chapter that this is the only liberating path. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha, monks and a great gathering of the Sangha Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the Samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. The same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice a profound Prajaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness. Emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity, no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas. No I, dhatu, up to no mind, dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness, dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance, up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the three times by means of Prajaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teyata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. 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 Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound Prajaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son of noble family. Thus it is, O son of noble family. Thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajaparamita, just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas were rejoiced. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Kala jube nejo nama nengaje de junga yi de de jen rubaba lama yi bujin zi nezong gandro zola shatse lo gasamara chachandara samara yave gasamara. Aga samara jachandara samara yave de atong gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoa papa concha sanji kaya de medoji shel obadoji medoji shewadoji dragi baji medoji danji sherin kariye soa gerin do jaji joji wada medon de bejan dandra wada tomo junjin bonzon zonjoji daji de janjan dale de shu. We'll make a mandala offering. Request for teaching. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready. A shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide, has sent forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I go for refuge. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there's grasping, you do not have the view. Okay, so I know we don't have tons of time left, but we have some time left. And I'd like to talk about the section that we're in the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment a little bit. And I think it's important that we do look at one point about this, because we're in the medium scope section. We already went over the teaching shared in common with beings of small capacity and learned about the the drawbacks of the lower realms and the excellent basis that we have that will perish, and we don't want to go to the lower realms, and we know how to go to the lower realms because we've studied karma and its results, and we know how to purify our behavior because we've studied the 4 opponent powers. So we went over this in the small scope, and then in the medium scope we start to realize, this idea of being born into the higher realms of cyclic existence that I'm shooting for and the teachings shared in common with beings of small capacity is just not a great goal, because of the sufferings that we find so prominent in even the higher realms of cyclic existence. And even in the highest realm of cyclic existence, we still find this, one most subtle suffering, the pervasive compounded suffering that's going to force that being into a not as good state again in the future. So we see that nowhere in cyclic existence is somewhere we want to be if we've studied well enough. And the way we learn that it's not somewhere we want to be is by studying the first noble truth. This is the superior truth of suffering, and then identifying it as Buddha said that we have to. So that's the only way we're going to come to the conclusion that cyclic existence isn't for us. Korwa isn't for us. We may have a bad day, as Dharma Kirti says in the Pramanavartika Karika, talks about how you can have this idea of wanting to emerge from a suffering, but that as soon as the suffering goes away, you don't want to emerge anymore. You don't have this kind of desire to emerge when this kind of gross, coarse suffering isn't there anymore. So this isn't what we're talking about. We're talking about an idea that we would come to the conclusion of that every experience that we have within cyclic existence is dissatisfying, and is the kind of thing we want to be free from. You want to be free from some sort of horrendous kind of mental state. As soon as your mental state is free, you may have made all kinds of proclamations that you're going to study lots more Dharma, and you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And then as soon as that immediate suffering is removed, then your Dharma practice is removed. And that's because it wasn't real renunciation. It wasn't founded in something that meant anything. It was founded in just an experience that was temporary and fleeting, and you threw yourself out of, because of some sort of high amount of suffering, into something you thought would be an antidote. And then your practice isn't really what becomes the antidote to the high suffering. It's just goes away because it's impermanent usually. And then you don't have that high suffering anymore, and you're still doing this practice, and it doesn't seem to have any reason to do it anymore. So unless you've studied the First Noble Truth really, really well, those kind of coarse sufferings that throw you into the first kind of stages of, I got to become a Buddhist, I want to practice spirituality, those are going to go away. Those aren't going to be as intense. Those aren't going to be as loud. And when they're not as loud, you need the First Noble Truth to be loud. And if someone who has studied the First Noble Truth enough to have renunciation feels that all of cyclic existence feels like when you're in turmoil, feels that kind of empty hollowness about it. But it's not a negative state, it's a positive state, it's a hopeful state. So you think of renunciation as, oh, samsara is so bad. No, it's, oh, I know samsara is so bad and there's something awesome I can do. That's renunciation. It's not, oh, I can't leave the house. Oh, it's, oh, thank goodness I know about all of this so I can go for what really makes sense. So you're renouncing what doesn't work. It's like, oh, I'm renouncing, doing something stupid. It's not, oh, it just makes sense. But it only would make sense if you knew what the First Noble Truth was and why there's something better than what you settle for every time that makes you so dissatisfied. So the thing you settle for over and over and over again that makes you so dissatisfied, the Buddha explains it so clearly that we start to see the dissatisfaction in the thing we think is going to make us happy, and we start to set our sights on something that doesn't let us down. And when we set our sights on something that doesn't let us down, and that becomes our daily activity, doing things for something that doesn't let us down, it's smarter. Just think about it. Do stuff for things that let you down, or do stuff for things that don't let you down. I mean, as soon as somebody's able to use a brain well enough to use logic, what, 7, 8 years old? What do you think you should do? Do things that are going to make you not get what you want, or make it kind of like what you thought you wanted. But like, you ask a little kid, I wanted Tonka truck. You gave me a fake Tonka truck. That wasn't really what I wanted. I wanted a real Tonka. It says Tonka on it. Anyone who's my age range and a boy, or maybe girls too, now I'm being like, whatever, would know what I'm talking about. There were these specific toys that were fancy, and they were like supposedly made the best. And people who had a little money had them. People who didn't have as much money wanted them. Cheers. But anyway, it's funny. I don't know how I got off on that diversion. But you're not looking for just any specific kind of happiness that's going to let you down. You're looking for the real thing. And when you find out a way to get the real thing, you ask the little kid, hey, if you know the way to get the real thing you want, should you do that? Or should you do the thing that gets the thing you don't really want, but it's kind of like it, and then it lets you down? The little kid will say, I want the thing that doesn't let me down, that is the thing I actually want. So the Buddha is telling us, like, all this stuff that we're running around for and grabbing at and pushing away, and especially running at and grabbing for, is just going to let us down, and doesn't make any sense to even get up and start running. The getting up is stupid. The getting up and going towards it's stupid. Why? Well, we need to know why. And we need to understand that we're better than this. We're worth more than this. We should have more self-respect. If we respected ourselves, we'd go do the things that we bring the results that we're looking for. That would be self-respect. We respect ourselves, we wouldn't keep running for things that are dissatisfying, proven to be dissatisfying over and over again. To some degree, because we've had more satisfying experiences in the midst of doing the same things. I know as a musician, singing on a stage or playing guitar, they were all playing guitar and singing on a stage, but there's one or two of them that I point out, then the rest of them all stunk. And that one made me want it bigger. Doesn't matter what it was. It was a big show we played, a lot of people, a lot of signing autograph, a lot of stuff happened. Only one time in my life this went on a show. People thought we were bigger than we were. And I craved to be bigger after that. And all of the other things kind of stunk in comparison to it when that happened. All the littler kind of concert shows I played now were just like, oh God, man, I don't even want to talk about it. I don't talk to anybody that I did those. I talk to them about doing this and say, oh, hopefully we're going to do that. That's the dissatisfaction I'm talking about. So I'm going to end here. I wanted to talk about mental consciousness and how Dharmakirti proves beginningless lives. Because if we're going to have this idea come about, we're shucking off bodies and having rebirth, and there's uncertainty, and our mother becomes our husband, we're going to have to figure out that there's lives before this one, and lives in the future. So next class, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how do we establish kind of beginningless lives. So looking at this truth of suffering the Buddha's talking about could mean more, and how it could be more solidified by logic and reasoning, not just kind of hope. And like someone said something, and wouldn't that be neat, using logic and reasoning to establish that, consciousness isn't like the physicality of this that dies and breaks. Consciousness just keeps going. Consciousness isn't a substance in terms of, matter. Consciousness is just temporal moments, that undergo change, that continue. Riding on a subtle wind. But we'll talk about that next time. And I'm glad everybody got to listen today. And I hope it was helpful. But if we look at the 6 sufferings, I encourage you, go to Lam Rim Chemo, Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, look at the 6 sufferings and see why did Jeff say understanding past lives is important. And then when we come back next week, then we'll talk about it. So just think about it. Go to the Lam Rim Chemo, think about how all of these sufferings, and even the 8th suffering, in the 8 sufferings, the 8th, and the 1st, depending on how you look at it, but the 8th, at least, these appropriated aggregates, how do past lives and future lives, why does this matter? 6 sufferings, what does this matter? How does this have anything to do with anything? And we'll talk about that next time. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, you have no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. Prayer for the flourishing of Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings. I feel so fortunate to have been in contact with these teachings because of the kindness of Khyentse Geshe Wandak and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Though he's the father, producer of all conquerors, as a conqueror's son, he produced the thought of upholding the conqueror's Dharma in infinite worlds. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. When in the presence of Buddha Endraketu, he made his vow, the conqueror and his offspring praised his powerful courage. Through this truth, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. That the lineage of pure view and conduct might spread, he offered a white crystal rosary to the sage who gave him a conch and prophesied that through this truth may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. His pure view free of eternity or destruction. His pure meditation cleansed of dark, fading, and fog. His pure conduct practiced according to the conqueror's orders. May the conqueror Losang's teachings be flourish. Learned, since he extensively sought out learning, reverent, rightly applying it to himself, good, dedicating all for beings in the doctrine, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Through being sure that all scriptures, definitive and interpretive, were without contradiction, advice for one person's practice, he stopped all misconduct. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Listening to the explanations of the Tripitakas, realized teachings, practice of the 3 trainings, his skilled and accomplished life story is amazing. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Outwardly calm and subdued by the hearer's conduct, inwardly trusting in the 2 stages practice, he allied without clash the good paths of Sutra and Tantra. May the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. Combining voidness explained as the causal vehicle with great bliss achieved by method, the effect vehicle, hard essence of 80,000 Dharma bundles, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. By the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors, like the main guardians of the 3 beings' paths, the quick-acting Lord, Vaishravana, Karmayana, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. In short, by the lasting of glorious gurus' lives, by the earth being full of good, learned, reverent holders of the teaching, and by the increase of power of its patrons, may the conqueror Losang's teachings flourish. So we see all of the conditions in that prayer that are needed for us to be able to practice the Dharma and for the flourishing of the Dharma to happen. I encourage you to look at that also. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer as a thanksgiving for the teaching passed down from Buddha to me by the kindness of my Lama Khyentse Geshe Wandak and His Holiness Dalai Lama and all the teachers you hear me talking about that I revere so much. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. And I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made, may they be purified by this mantra of Vajrasattva. Imagining that from Vajrasattva, who in the space in front of you, who's inseparable from your root Lama, you imagine light rays and nectars are showering down on you and all sentient beings who you still have in your visualization. Imagining that these light rays and nectars are showering down and transforming into white Oms, red Ahs, and blue Homs, and purifying yours and all sentient beings, body, speech, and mind, respectively. Om Benzasato Samaya Manabalaya Benzasato Zena Bajida de Meva Zulagaya Meva Zubagaya Meva Anurag Meva Zavazini Meva Savakam Sutrame Kidam Shiam Kuruhum Ha Bhagavan Zavata Kata Benzabam Benzababa Maha Samaya Sapa Ah Hom Ve. May we always be protected by Paul and Lamo. Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Chichikala Rama Chichikala Jo Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Chichikala Rama Chichikala Jo Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Chichikala Rama Chichikala Jo Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Chichikala Rama Chichikala Jo Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Chichikala Rama Chichikala Jo Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Rama Chichikala Rama Chichikala Jo Long Jong Jo Rama Jo Rama Jo Jo Rama Jo Kalara Jimo Ramo Ajadaja Dunjo Ruda Ruda Hunjo. And now, so we see in Lama Tsongkhapa's prayer. So you see me do each week, you say, may we always be protected by Palden Lama. And right in Lama Tsongkhapa's prayer, it says, by the power of the ocean of oath-bound doctrine protectors. So Dharma protectors make an oath that they'll protect the Dharma. So we want to be connected to the Dharma, and we want to be protected. So they said, we'll protect the Dharma and we'll protect the practitioners of the Dharma. So this is why we see it right in Lama Tsongkhapa's prayer, but why we have these kind of ideas of Dharma protectors and so forth. And Palden Lama is the emanation of Tara. So Rinpoche said that she is our protector. So just want to give you a little history aside while I'm going over time. And any obstacles that you have in meeting with the Dharma, wherever you are, may they be removed immediately through the power of the mantra of Drapo Sundrit, the three wrathful protectors. Om Vajrabani Haya Griva Garuda Om Ve. Okay. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness, all powerful Avalokiteshvara. Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. A prayer of supplication to Namgyal Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche. Written by me on March 6, 2023, 1 year after his passing. A Complex Yogi poses as a simple monk by Jeff Allen. Homage to Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om Ahom, Om Ahom, Om Ahom. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like a teacher who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. Teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood the sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove the miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. The sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they may know who you really are. And if we see Rinpoche is inseparable from Aryatara, we see Rinpoche is inseparable from Palden Lama. Thank you so much, everybody. I appreciate all of you. I hope your week is full of virtue. And don't forget, Thursday night, we're teaching calm abiding, and we're going at it very systematically. So I encourage all of you who want to learn about shamatha and how shamatha and vipassana are different and so forth. I really encourage all of you to come 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Thursday nights. All right, thank you. Hope you practice these teachings. That's the only reason we're doing them. That's all we're giving these teachings for, is that so that, you know, what Rinpoche shared with me that's helped my mind to get a little tiny bit better, will I share with you, and then you make your own mind a little bit better yourself. I can't do anything else but tell you what Rinpoche said to me. Thank you.